we're going to start on the next panel here. So I will welcome up to the stage Scott Ventresca.
It's always nice to be the last one of the day, huh? Look.
We're all warmed up.
Yeah, exactly. All right, thank you. Welcome. Scott Ventresca. I represent the city of Toronto globally, around the world. I've been working with the city of Toronto for 19 years. The past 8 years in the what we call the elite sports world, right? And so 8 years ago, I was handed the small file called FIFA, and said, look after these guys. We got to bid, we got to pitch, and we got to win. So that's the world I live in. I work in a world called a DMO, a destination marketing organization. And the DMO is I'm not a city employee. I'm not a government employee. We are the marketing branch. We're the reach of the city. We're funded, much like Vancouver tourism is funded, we're funded by a MAT tax. So when you stay in a hotel and you check out, you're paying a 6% or a 7% accommodations tax. That accommodations tax is being sent back to the city, and then the city is sending us that money so that we can use that money to market and go after other events. So it's just cyclical, right? So the money coming in, we're spending to go get other business to bring back in, to give back into the pool, all right? So 5 years ago, the CEO of our organization walks up.
Sorry, 1 moment.
Yeah, don't worry. Is it not on?
It is. It's something that's out of my
Oh.
I want you to go.
Oh, there we go. Okay, so the CEO walks up to me about 5 years ago and hands me a file and says, Mayor Tory in Toronto really would like us to look at esports. You handle the elite sports. Take it. Go for it. I don't play games. I'm not a video game player. I'm in the world of Major League gaming, right? FIFA, Major League Baseball, NHL, the NBA. I work with those type of organizations, working with the Pan Am Games, the Invictus Games, on behalf of the city to bring those events into the city. And what's important to know about what I do and what our organization is we own nothing and we manage nothing, right? And yet I have thousands of bosses, technically, expecting me to fill their hotels, fill their arenas, fill the airlines, fill the restaurants, fill the venues, all together. They're looking at us to do that. And so, took on the file in 2020, and in 2023, through the City of Toronto and Ontario Creates, which is an agency of the province, we published an esports strategy called Level Up. And that's a public document. You can go online and pull it up. It's a 65-page document done by 3 levels: City, us, Ontario Creates. And from there, we created what we call an eSport consortium. And so I co-chair the eSport consortium along with my colleague here, Jeff from TMU. And people around the table on the eSport consortium are people in our city, our organization, our community that are of like mind. They want to bring big events into the city in some way. Doesn't necessarily mean we need to bring in League of Legends. We just want to build the business. So people who sit around this table are Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, MLSE, who owns the Raptors and the Leafs. They actually have on staff a director of esports now. It's a full-time job, and he represents MLSE, but in esports. So he handles the NBA 2K team, but he's also in charge of working with us to fill his arenas for esport events. Other people around the table, Overactive Media, Shopify, because Shopify Rebellion is based in our city, TMU, obviously, City Hall, and all sorts of other people of like mind. We even have a student who sits on the consortium, because we as a group focus on filling the city with the right types of business. We're not going after everything, We can't go after everything. We have to be strategic in what we go after and why we're going after those certain pieces of business. So who are we going after it and why are we going after them? In a convention bureau world, conventions book 5-10 years out. So if you have, like coming into this city this year is Alcoholics Anonymous. 40,000 people are coming into Vancouver. We hosted them, I believe, in '08. It's a big convention. It's going to occupy both of these buildings. All the hotels will be filled. But to work on a bid like that, usually about 5-10 years out. The beautiful thing with the esport, the gaming market, is they are what we call short-term bookings. They're a year out, maybe a year and a half, max. But the beautiful part of that is it fills our gaps. It fills our windows where we have low occupancy. So in the summer months, for instance, Scotiabank Arena is empty because the Leafs aren't in, the Raptors aren't in. So I'm going to go after esport business that can fill my arena in the summer. I'm going to go after esport business that can fill my baseball stadium in non-baseball season. I'm going to fill my other arena, the Coca-Cola Coliseum, 9,700 seats, in non-OHL hockey season, right? So we're not going after all of the events. We're going after strategic events, and we're going after them because they book rooms. People come from, I think there's a group right here. They're coming to Toronto this summer to watch Valorant. They're coming from all over the world. They're spending money in our city. They're generating the economy into the city, right? They're staying over. They're going out to restaurants and they're spending money. And what we call the visitor economy booms, right? So we all went through here in this city and in Toronto, thus Taylor Swift, right? Taylor Swift generated for Toronto $83 million in economic impact because we measured that through hotel bookings and visitor spend. It's the same thing for hosting MSI this summer, for hosting Valorant this summer. We measure an economic impact, and we know exactly when to go after these events and which events make sense depending on the size. I'm not always going after the 15,000 person MSI. I'm not always going after the VCT Masters. I'm not always going after the counter strikes. Sometimes I'm focusing on filling hotels. Sometimes I'm focused on filling smaller venues because they're building up the pace of that venue, right? And then what's happening is that's causing compression in our city. Ultimately, the rates are going up. Sorry. The hotel rates are going up because the demand is going up, right? So I'm focusing on very, very specific events for our city. I'm not going after everything because it doesn't make sense, right? It all depends on the season. Venues used, they're using everything. They're not just using arenas. They're using college campuses. Am I on the right screen? Yeah. They're using college campuses. Mortal Kombat World Finals. I believe that was the first time ever in the history of that event that was held on a post-secondary education institution, on a campus, right? That was held last June. So we're filling college campuses. We're filling hotel ballrooms. GOML, every year, is located at the Sheridan Centre in downtown Toronto. They're taking over all their meeting space. They're filling all their bedrooms in a hotel. It's not an arena. VCT is another perfect example. VCT is not in an arena. And I've seen the social media posts with a lot of unhappy people as to why they couldn't get tickets because the venue and the size. It's not in an arena. And I'll tell you why it's not in an arena, because MLSE has playoff season. It's not like we're going to make the playoffs, but whatever. The Leafs never make the playoffs, but anyway, you didn't hear that from me. But in addition, I mean, we can't use Scotiabank Arena. The Leafs are in-house. NBA's in-house. We can't use Coca-Cola Coliseum. The OHL Marlies is in-house. So what can we use when Riot comes to us and says, we want to be in Toronto, We want to look at you for MSI. We want to look at you for Valorant. What can we do? We be creative. And so we take our second convention center downtown, which is 1 million square feet of space, open space, and we say you can have this space and you build your arena on the floor of this space. And so that's what they're doing. They're taking over a convention center, they're taking hundreds of thousands of square feet of space, and they're building onto the floor an arena. So when you as a fan walk in this June, you'll be walking in as if you're walking into an arena, right? And so we're being very creative based on the time of year, the size of the event, and the venues that have availability. Bums and seats. So when we talk about bums and seats, we're talking about how do I tell my politicians, my provincial government, my minister of sport, my city mayor, my city hall, my film commissioner, how do I tell them the value and the impact hosting an esport event has on the economy of the city, right? And I think Jeff put these figures up yesterday. If I were to take the top 10 on my top target list, the top 10 events in esports, it would generate $250 million in economic impact. It would put into the system over 1,500 full-time employees, and it would only cost us $16 million to do it, right? That's a big number because each of these major events require what they call a hosting fee, but I'm not going to win them all. I'm going to win maybe 2. I'm going to maybe 1, maybe 3 if I'm lucky. Right? You get more no's than yeses in my world. So you have to have very thick skin because you get out of every 10 pitches, you might win 1 or 2, right? But even if I won 2, I don't need all that 16 million. I only need 3 million. But that 3 million is then going to generate $80 million in economic impact. So when you put it in front of the politicians and the ministers of sport that way, they see it very clearly because it speaks their language. It's not just the economic impact of the full-time employees, it's the amount of taxes that are going back into the government pockets, right? Because when these events are held, things are rented, goods are bought, taxes are paid. Hotels charge taxes. All of the tax money goes back to the province. So we lay it out for them on a big chart. We say, okay, Minister Cho, if you were to give us $5 million, I could go get you this, this, and this, and it would generate this for you, and it would give you this much in taxes, and would give you this much in employees working in our system that weren't working before. And so that speaks their language. And so we are at a position now in Toronto where we have the consortium, we have our strategy together, and now we're in front of the province. And we're having meetings with the province, and we're having meetings with the ministers, where they're actually happening in the next 2 weeks. Because they do have a wallet under their sport portfolio where they want to, and they've indicated to us, they want to look at esports. And they want to look at esports and how can we fund and how can we win. Now, to a politician, if he's going to give you money, he wants to see immediate results because he wants to be on camera, or she wants to be on camera, taking the glory, right? So those have to be pretty quick and key impact, but I got them all lined up. So I'm going to say to Minister, I've got this one and this one, waiting for us to say, yes, we can do it. Because it all comes down to the hosting fee. And when you break it down to the data that we're tracking and why we're tracking it because we tell story. That's how we get what we need from the government. We need to tell the story. And so when we tell the story in another way, how do we track it, right? How do we track all this data? And there's so many different mechanisms. It's not just hotel rooms. Hotel rooms is one part. We're also looking at the pace of the city. So we track the pace of Toronto, 10-15. Some of my colleagues in other markets, they're booking their clients into 2034, 2035. Signed. They're confirming Toronto, right? So we're looking at the pace We're looking at the pace of today, we're looking at the pace of last year, and we're going to them and saying, listen, when we hosted GAMA last year, the pace of the city, the occupancy raised up, the RevPAR, revenue per available room raised up, the average daily rate went up, so it's a benefit to our city to host these things, right? And we're tracking through pace, we're tracking through hotels, we're tracking through bums and seats, because we don't base all of our data on bedrooms, because most of these companies don't book bedrooms. Riot books bedrooms because they have 400 people coming in from Riot for 1 month's time to live in our city to execute Valorant. And so they're all staying in hotels. That's just Valorant. But we're tracking it through occupancy levels, through booking pace, and through bums and seats, because we have the history from the gamers and the event organizers and the Riots of the world and the Blasts and the ESLs. And they're getting very good because we're trying to teach them how to speak our language, because they come at a city and the first thing they ask a city like a Dallas or a Madrid or a Paris or us or Vancouver is, how much can you give us? They always ask, because there's always a host city fee. And the bigger the event, the bigger the amount, in the millions. And so for us to get that money, we need them to show us their homework. Show us the previous history of DreamHack. Show me how many people in Dallas you have. Show me the breakdown. And actually, Kevin did a very good job this year for providing the breakdown of Battle of BC. Right? So he can show very quickly to Vancouver, to the convention center next year when it comes time for him to renegotiate. Listen, I brought in 2,000 people to this event. Of that 2,000 people, 30% were from the US, 80% were not from BC, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That tells the story. And that's a negotiating tool for him, because then that speaks my language and I can go and talk to my people to get the money that they're asking for. And then we're doing one other thing to capture data. And we started doing this last year. And it's called intercept surveys. We're actually utilizing students from the Toronto Metropolitan University. So we started doing intercept surveys. Mortal Kombat was held at in the campus. We had live bodies, students, asking everyone going into that venue, where'd you come from? How long are you staying? Where are you staying? What made you come here? Obviously, the event, but how long are you staying? You staying longer? Did you come in earlier? Where are you going to visit? And we're taking that live data through the intercept surveys to show back the raw live data on our end so we could track the economic impact with even deeper numbers. And then we also have on our team research data analysts. They work in our office, and this is all they do. They generate EI impact amounts per event based on all the data from all the different areas, right? So it sounds long, but it really isn't once the system's moving, once the machine is working, right? And so things to consider, we especially, we're still young in this world compared to other cities around the world, right? Dallas, they have a good model. Raleigh, they have a state funding model. Right? Austin is good. Allen, Texas, Paris, London, Madrid, Copenhagen. When we're competing, we're not competing against tier 2, tier 3 cities. We're competing against London, Vancouver, Montreal, Paris. And so we're not the only fish, as much as Toronto likes to think they are. We're not. We're actually very small in the world of this esport world, right? Because we're only just starting. And we've been doing this now for 5 years, but that's young compared to certain destinations that have been doing this for far longer, right? And so accessibility is a huge part. Availability, obviously. If you don't have the venue, you don't have the community on board, because I can't bid on this by myself. It's not just me going into the boardroom or me doing the presentation. Riot is not coming to Toronto because of me. Riot is coming to Toronto because I pursued them, I engaged with them, and then I introduced them to our community. I don't speak geek. I surround myself by geeks who speak geek, because I don't, and I'm the first to admit it. But know your strengths as a destination. That's not my strength. My strength is marketing. My strength is bidding, pitching, and winning. But I can't bid, pitch, and win without the community on my side. I can't bid, pitch, and win without the Jeffs, without the MLSEs, without the city, without all those entities behind me. Because that's the only reason why Valorant is coming, is because we have a community behind us. And the beautiful part with Valorant this summer is they are actively engaging and activating the Toronto Metropolitan University during Riot, or during Valorant. So during Valorant, they're in town for 3.5 weeks. The campus is going to be engaged by Riot. Sick Kids Hospital is going to be engaged by Riot, because they truly believe that when you come into a city, you don't just turn on the lights, host an event, turn off the lights and leave. They want to impact the city in some way and leave a legacy. That's huge. That speaks our language. And I can sell to my people way quicker when Riot speaks our language like that. Riot wants to give back to the community in some way. I love that, right? We love that. Riot wants to donate PCs to the sick kids at Sick Kids Hospital, because they truly believe that gaming helps kids get better. Kids feel better when they're gaming. So it's not just gaming for money, it's gaming for health in certain ways. And so there's so many different areas to consider, and I know we're going to dive into it more on the panel. So I'm going to stop here, because I can talk forever, right, on this. I'm very passionate about it, but again, I am not a gamer. I surround myself by the right people, and that's why we as a city are starting to see the benefits and reap the rewards, right? But that's the only way a destination is going to truly be successful in securing some of these events. Whether they're 500 people or 50,000 people, the only way is you get your city on board, your community behind you. That's the only way you'll be successful. Thank you.
Yeah, welcome to the stage, panelists. As you notice, my name is not CK Dollywall. We've had a little bit of a switch up in the programming, so this one's going to be a little bit more organic and a little bit more conversational, because I have not studied the questions. But just for a little bit of context before I hand the mic over here to our panelists, for a quick introduction, my name is Eyren Uggenti. I represent the Alberta Esports Association, founding team member from that, and also a member of Bow Valley College over in Calgary, Alberta, where we're doing all kinds of cool stuff in esports. So with that, I'll hand it over to the panelists to do an introduction themselves.
Thanks, Ryan. So my name's Eyren Uggenti. I'm here representing Level Events Corporation. We're an event production company located out of Lethbridge, Alberta, and we run a high-level innovation conference. So we're in our second year, and we have a large esports track. So we were part of the AEC 2024 student tournament last year in Alberta, province-wide.
Hi, everybody. My name is Tyler Westover. I'm the Director of Business and Government Relations with the City of Surrey. We certainly have quite a bit of a focus on esports and non-traditional, more niche markets for any of our sports programming. I definitely want to make sure that Nicholas, who's in the crowd, gets a bit of a shout out. Please give a wave, Nicholas. Super passionate about this topic matter, and we are definitely focusing on esports as we move ahead. That should be the big takeaways as we kind of work through the rest of the session here, is that Surrey definitely wants to see you here in our city center and activating in our community, really for any of the reasons and more that Scott has already mentioned here today.
Again, hello, Scott Ventresca, Destination Toronto. Nice to meet you.
So Getting into it here then. So, on this panel, or over this weekend rather, we've talked a lot about events, community, things like that. This panel, given that we're talking about tourism and events in our cities, this is kind of where a lot of the economic impact of that kind of activity, sort of the rubber hits the road, right? So starting off that conversation, how can we bring esports tourism to more conversations in the broader tourism industry and to leading tourism bodies?
Yeah, so from my perspective and experience just in the recent years, our outlook was to create something grassroots and then see what we could do to develop more opportunities in a smaller rural region. So we have about 115,000 population in Lethbridge, and the ability to be able to produce something and understand, how this could work for the community, how it could drive more visitation and drive more of a profile for what we were trying to do in this rural municipality. Actually was very fortunate. Our tourism office, Tourism Lethbridge, they were our first sponsor through the door last year. And with that, I was able to produce what we found to be a really impactful event. We had over 1,000 attendees in 2 days. So that felt really good, set the tone, and it was, getting us connected to the greater community that already existed in the city and just helped bring that to the forefront. So for me, that was a really big vote of confidence when we were able to negotiate that and have enough to kind of make sure that we were able to move forward on the event. So that's really that grassroots side of things. That's where I'm starting from. I want to create jobs in the economy in our community. And I think this is, the perfect opportunity to do that because we have amazing, talented youth in our city. So that's my perspective on it.
I'm going to add on. I definitely agree with your points on that. I think from our perspective as well, there's a bit of a show and tell exercise that needs to take place. So Pataka was something that has just come up in October of this last year, 2024, where we were able to showcase, where the organizers were able to showcase for esports as well as mashing in with culture and the celebration of Diwali. Really that this type of event can be successful and successful for the city of Surrey and our community. I think that's also what you're going to end up hearing a lot from any one of us, and we've been hearing a whole lot today. This is really about building community and making sure it's actually transferring into the physical 3D world rather than just staying in a digital world itself. So grounding this more into how it translates and creating some experience around it. I think really those types of considerations our tourism industry is very interested in, and I think they can operationalize and take good advantage of. So we're just going to continue to beat on this drum, so to speak, and make sure that we're showcasing the opportunities and being very intentional about how we're bringing this to life in the city of Surrey.
It's funny because when I took on the file, as I explained earlier, the first year I had this new file of esports, I wasn't actively seeking to go after securing business. I was trying to actually sell internally, right? So I had to sell this world to the stakeholders because they have no idea, right? It's sad to say, but the majority of my world in the hotel world and the convention centers and the arenas, they're middle-aged men, right? And they have no idea what's going on in this world. They have no idea, right? And so I had to spend the first year doing town halls, talking to hoteliers, talking to GMs, talking to MLSE, talking to stakeholders as to why it's important for them to get on my train, right? And so once I had the buy-in, right, then it was reaching out to form the consortium and get the community involved. But I can't secure the business if I don't have my stakeholders on board. If I don't have them on board, I'm dead in the water. Right? So I needed to sell to them first, then get the consortium together to go out and actually sell to eSport and to sell to Riot and to sell to ESL, right? And so that took a while, but we got it. And so it's all about telling the story, very short, succinct, black and white, right? Not a big, long story. No one has time for that anymore, right? Get to the point. And so we do, but it's also about bringing these politicians and bringing these city councilors and bringing the mayor to the events, right? And so during Valorant, for example, we're inviting a bunch of provincial ministers, we're inviting community, we're inviting, not necessarily on the finals day, but they're gonna go and experience the event, and then we're gonna do a meet and greet with Riot, and we're gonna go behind the stage, see how it works. We're gonna involve the tech community, right? And so there's many different facets, but the other thing is never forget the people in your own backyard. And we have a lot of people in our city that are homegrown game organizers, right? Gomo, he lives in our city. Overactive Media, they live in our city. They generate a lot of money for us, right? And we can never forget that there's the community in our city that's actively putting back into the economy of our own city, all right? And so we never forget the people in our own backyard.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, Scott. And one of the things I kind of want to like touch on there is you've had to have a lot of conversations sort of onboarding or educating some of those internal stakeholders to understand what esports is. And I'm sure the rest of you have sort of experienced this as well. Do you guys maybe want to share some stories of some of the main maybe concerns or roadblocks that you had in those conversations with, why, like what is stopping you from understanding or wanting to engage with esports?
I'll quickly start. I'll tell you why. Again, I mentioned middle-aged white men. They don't get it, right? And so they are used to organizing or hosting or bidding on with us International Society of Hand Surgeons, the International Conference on Metabolic Disorders, the International IBM World, Microsoft World. Those things are tangible to them. They can see the impact it has because these events book a convention center, book a lot of rooms, book offsite venues, sign all the contracts, and so to them, that's all they know, right? And so we had to get them out of that mindset that, yes, I get it. But think of it, Taylor Swift, 50,000 people here for how many nights? You think she booked hotel rooms for all her fans? No. Neither does Riot, but they still are coming, right? They're still staying somewhere. Where they stay, I don't care. But I know they're coming because we're tracking the data. And right, and so if we start telling that story back to them, that kind of opens their eyes.
Well, I think that's, I'm just going to add on to it. I think that it's about the translation of what could be and what is and how that realistically moves. So a part of the challenges that I think anyone will end up seeing is how is the industry performing? How can you actually enact that as you're moving forward as a community or as a DMO or otherwise and support that over time? And then we've also heard a little bit earlier on, you're building community at the same time. So how do you support this in a way where it's not going to be a flash in the pan, but it becomes something that is a broader, larger experience that you can continue to grow and expand over time? So it's not just like having Taylor Swift once, but you get to have that on an annual basis, or you may have that in your off seasons. There's a strategic reason for you to be able to focus on this and still build community. So it's a win-win-win for your community, your DMO or your hoteliers or others, as well as the industry, and then those that are looking into getting into esports or anything else.
Yeah, and I think, Scott, during your talk, you were talking about the economic development piece. And so that's the lens I've been bringing to a lot of the operations that we've been looking at how to do this, how to do it well, and how to make sure that it got the staying power. And so, as a great example, like not everyone understands economic development. I just fortunately worked in the economic development office in our city for a couple of years. Running entrepreneurial programs. So I saw a few threads and commonalities between what I was trying to achieve in my kind of career track, and then as a proprietor and creating businesses in the locale, I was able to understand that there needs to be a level of accessibility and awareness, and the accessibility piece is something that I'm not willing to really move away from. So we created our event to be free for 18 and under. And that is a huge bid on the future of our economy. We want to see people be able to come in from the surrounding regional areas that might only have 5,000, 10,000 people in their village or their hamlet or things like this. And they're bringing out even like 6 players, and a teacher's driving them in the minivan to come out and experience this. We had people coming in from Picani, from Siksika to play, these titles that we're able to host. And last year's was very high school level focus, but this year, one of the feedbacks we got, we wanted to include and be even more inclusive. So we've actually created a youth bracket, and then we have an adult bracket. So 18 and under on the youth bracket, and then 16 plus. So you get a bit of crossover if someone's a little bit older, they want to competitively play against the adults, they get to sign up for both brackets. And if they're 18 and under, they're getting in for free. And I'm working around the logistics and the other things because we want to make a splash. We want to make a presence. And it was very interesting to hear you speak about it, Scott, because like the way I'm dealing with it is in the inverse. Like we don't have that kind of draw yet. And I'm trying to create that magnet right now, and hoping for that support from our DMOs and from Travel Alberta and things like that. So even in coming here today, it's inspiring me. Like I sit on the Indigenous Tourism Committee as part of my work with BIPOC Foundation. And that's been the last 2 years. We're doing tons of new events. We have the Agri-Food Hub. It's 250,000 square feet. And it's a huge center, and it just opened like in the last 2.5 years. So when that came available, I come from an events background. I used to run conferences here in Vancouver, Small Business BC Awards, things like that. And so it's my opportunity now to create something that's going to drive the future forward, so that, in the future, the students, my children, people will see that there is this potential in a municipality of 115,000. So we're marking the map and saying, here, let's start to attract more of that business. And I want to be a conduit to that in my community. So that's what drives me to produce as a private corporation, right? And I think that's what I wanted to kind of add in there. So making sure that people understand and can step into this and use it as a first experience, so that they can come to Toronto or come to Surrey or Vancouver and then take advantage of a larger conference with maybe even more international appeal.
Yeah, Eyren, you mentioned sort of, things moving forward in the future and everything, but I want to sort of rewind a little bit here and go back to a very sort of catalyzing time, I think, for esports a couple of years ago. Being people working in the tourism industry, what was your experience like with the impact of COVID-19 on, the traditional sport world, and how esports may be tied into that, or how it created an opportunity for esports in your respective regions?
Yeah, I'll start, and I'll be brief on this one. I did notice that there was that bit of lull and then push inwards, right? And we're still seeing some of the effects of that. But then I come to an event like this today, and I see, people who are out enjoying, connecting. I'm able to take part in that too. And I mean, it's been a ramp up again. So I'm sure you've all noticed, the last 3 years or so, we're starting to get back to that capability again. And there's still shortfalls in the job market. So like, how can we, utilize this in a way to inspire people to be self-starters and to, look at how they might do something even at like the club level, or, as they're getting into their career track. So that to me is one of the really interesting pieces, because we want to add the wraparound supports so that people understand that they can make an opportunity for themselves and others by actively participating.
So I'm going to have to be honest on this one. I was here I came into the Lower Mainland about 3 years ago. So around that time of COVID, I was in the Alberta landscape, actually. Okay. But I know from what I've seen here over the last 3 years, and being able to engage with a lot of the business community that's here, the tech community or anything else, it's really been over since the last 3 years or so, that obviously since the end of official COVID, so to speak. It took a little while for British Columbia to come out of turtling, quite frankly, and be able to come forward with in-person events and being able to engage with one another, build community out in real life, which I think was probably positive for some of the esports connectivity. If you start to look at even some of the Twitch viewership data or anything else, that absolutely skyrocketed over COVID. So I think that probably did quite a bit to build awareness. However, what is important for all of us, I think, to understand is esports is really about kind of harkening back to back in the day with, you're playing games with your buds all around in your, living room, or you're all in a LAN party, or whatever it is. it's about community. It's about being with other people, and we're seeing that in some of the viewership and the attendees to these major events. That is its own vibe, which I think has taken a little while to come back, but it is certainly coming back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess to echo, I mean, where COVID sucked. Right. And I mean, in Toronto, for example, I know a number of local bars and venues, smaller venues that were notorious for hosting collegiate and just local esport event, they've shut. Right. And so the grassroots, that level shut. They couldn't stay open. Right. And so it sucked. Right. And so I took the opportunity over the pandemic. And that's the thing with our industry, too. We are so we are in the events world. Right. We are susceptible to geopolitical, to pandemics, to everything. We are the temperature check. Tourism is the temperature check on how things are going in the world. Right. Technically. If people aren't crossing the border, if people aren't coming, something's up, right? And so we're pretty quick to assess what's going on in the world just by what's going on right now, right? And so there's all sorts of things that have to come into play, right? Visa issues, border issues, right? Dual entry visa issues. That's another pain in my ass, right? Because that's the reason Riot pulled out of Toronto in 22, right? We were supposed to hold semifinals. I will never, ever get over this. We spent 2 years schmoozing them, and they said yes. But it wasn't our fault. It's the US border, right? And so what happened is they could not have teams land in San Fran, come to Canada, go back to San Fran. The US would not allow dual entry visa. So we as a country Riot, unfortunately, had to pull out of Canada because they couldn't go back and forth. We had no problem with it. They did, right? It's out of our control, right? So certain things are out of our control, but you seize the opportunity of learning, working with government on how we can fix these things, because technically the same thing's going to happen next year here and in Toronto when we host this little game called FIFA. They're doing it. So how'd they do it? And we can't. So it's a conversation.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I was going to say, talking about the resilience of esports, but I guess a situation like that where things end up getting canceled kind of out of your control is a little bit different. How does, when it comes to esports versus, traditional sports and other traditional events, what does the difference look like for you guys between virtual versus in-person things? Obviously, if you're a specific region, you're trying to bring things into your region and have in-person activations. But when things like that go wrong, I mean, what does it look like to potentially switch to a virtual opportunity or something, as an alternative?
Okay, I'll start. So we have a team, whole marketing comms team, right? We know that Riot has sponsors, corporate sponsors, mass exposure, right? And so when games are happening, these corporate sponsors are anyone from, Louis Vuitton, who's making the skins, to the trophy, they're all there, MasterCard, State Farm, the big ones, right? And so our comms team is working alongside their comms team. How do we put Toronto in what they're doing out to the world virtually? Because maybe one day the player in Shanghai or the player in North Korea will go, that place looks pretty cool, right? I'm going to go check it out, right? So we're working with them on that angle. Right. And our whole comms team has, mass content and libraries that we work with Riot or whoever on how to showcase the city, not just in person, but showcase the city during live stream, during streaming.
Yeah, I think that it's always important to, as a part of your digital strategy, how are you maximizing everything you possibly can for the eyes that are going to be on the screens? In the case where there is going to be say something that was going to be in physical and then all of a sudden it shifts over to online, you better be able to capture everything you possibly can. And at the same time, let's be honest, support what is happening there. You have so many folks that have invested a lot. And you know that there's going to be some risk, obviously, on those that may have booked hotel rooms or may have booked some reservations out to different areas or tried to activate or whatever it is. So there's obviously going to be some challenge and relationship challenge that you're going to have to be dealing with and managing as you move ahead as well. So you need to manage that from a city standpoint. I would anticipate from a DMO standpoint, private industry standpoint. But ultimately, I think we all want these to be successful. They need to be profitable, let's face it, over time, whether that be in the far, far long term or if that's immediate, either one. But nonetheless, we need to make sure that there's good growth in this industry, because I think there is more on a workforce development and economic spin-off standpoint, a direct or induced economic spend standpoint, and just part of the community build for any one of us that we look at.
Yeah, and I think back to kind of what was said previously, there's the economic impact element. And so when I look at, the potential to run something virtually versus the potential to even run something hybrid, I am really inspired by the hybrid format. Even right now, it's part of my strategic plan for the 5-year to 10-year series. That's kind of our outlook for what I'm building. And I think that, I calculated the economic impact coming out of our event last year, put about 20,000 of my own dollars in, and we generated $120,000 of value for the city. So, I mean, it wasn't the types of numbers we're seeing out of Toronto, but it was still a 5X ROI. And I mean, that's enough to get the narrative started. It's enough to speak with partners and kind of show them that, hey, we can do it at this level too. And there's still a quality experience, and there's still, variety of bridging opportunities. And so the other kind of thing I'll mention is, part of our plan this year is we're actually recording, because we do innovation sessions throughout, and then there's, a gaming kind of innovation and gaming zone where we'll have all the tournament play. We actually have development studios that are there testing their new games. Last year, one of our studios in Lethbridge, they got their VR demo approved by Meta in the first go. And apparently that's really hard to do. And they had a whole ton of data collection just from battle testing it in our scenario last year. So they're actually going to demo this from our main stage this year. And so we're really trying to help, these up and coming developers. And when we get into the structure of what we can do in that hybrid format, which is why I'm thinking, virtual only, like there's a time and space, and we do a lot of education in that format. But when it comes to the connectivity, even that hybrid element is so invaluable, because we're actually going to be recording some of our select sessions and portaling that into some connections that we have in the Middle East. So throughout Dubai and through the MENA markets there. And then the other piece of that too is that we'll also be able to bridge with events like this. So actually Gallant Gaming is coming out to help us run a tournament bracket, because I courted them. I talked to them about it. I said, look, like I can't handle this build on my own, and I need, some help. And we came to an agreement, and we're really excited to have them here. It's the start of something really exciting for Alberta. And I think, one day you might see something like a Battle of Alberta or something like that. That would be pretty insane. And if I can be a part of that, like what a cool opportunity to bring to our locales. So yeah, I think, it's just important to build those narrative possibilities. And my hope is that as people see what we're doing, and it's harder to do that with the virtual only elements, as much as I'm like a remote worker and I'm literally like on my computer from my home office a lot of the time. But it's important to get out, right? Connect, be in your community, and at least once a month. Like if you are a remote worker, like make sure you're connecting. I mean, I've seen people I know today. There's way more Lethbridge people here than I even thought. There's like 27 people from Lethbridge here, and I'm in Vancouver. I used to live here, right? So it's amazing to see that I still have that growing network, and that network that provides enhancement for not just my means, but for those in my community that I want to help support as I become, more of a senior citizen, I guess we'll say, right?
That's okay. I think anyone here over the age of 30 counts as a senior citizen when it comes to esports. So that's just kind of how it goes. You guys brought up some really interesting points there. Eyren, I really like how you talked about sort of there's that element of both the virtual component and the in-person component in any of the events. And Scott, you're mentioning about selling a skin or something, I think it was. There was just a little bit of an anecdote. So one of my biggest esports titles used to be Overwatch back in the day. And I remember when Overwatch League first launched in, I think, 2016 or 2017 or something like that. And they had Overwatch League team skins that you could buy. I think it was a Houston Outlaw skin because I liked the like neon green and sort of like black coloring. I had no affiliation to the region or the team or whatever, but because I thought the skin was really cool, I decided to buy it, right? And that's the beginning of maybe a fandom or some way for, me as an individual to maybe engage with that as a sort of tourism property of something moving forward. So little anecdote out of the way, but that's a bit of a segue to some of the unique selling features of esports versus other events or industries. We've already talked a little bit about how there's sort of this virtual component or whatever, but from your perspectives and the conversations that you've had, what are some of the unique opportunities that esports offers to the world of tourism?
Yeah, and I'll just chime in from that economic development lens again. I view tourism as an economic development vehicle. I spend time in the workforce development and business retention space too. We have longstanding and new businesses that we want to get involved and get them in the mix, right? And then we also have a ton of talent pool. And I think that is what I even saw here today. Like when I'm, walking around downstairs on the gaming floor, and you've got, broadcasts happening. You've got people who are content creators. You've got people who are technologists, innovators. Maybe they're building their own games, or they're working within their, teams and clubs to create something special and unique that's fueling them, right? That to me is a big piece of how we solidify the future today, because if we can engage at that level and we can start to bring those development opportunities forward, I think that the workforce is going to depend on it. Like I really am seeing that. We have a big shortage of tech talent in Calgary. Calgary's been just booming around the tech industry, and I mean these are the capable individuals. Doesn't matter, which gender, which group, which demographic. Like there are so many gifted people that are getting involved first and foremost at the esports. My whole outlook is, how do I help them to understand the business opportunities that are ahead for them? Because they are going to have to, be able to survive and thrive, right? And the economy has shifted. I'm sure all of you have felt that. And so, how do we encourage them to take that step into maybe entrepreneurship, or take that step into creating their own series or their own engagements, even at the local level? So for me, that's really where I kind of cycle it back to all the time, is I'm really interested in how we can get the attention early. And then so that way when they're, in their 30s or something like that, they become the new employers and they have an affinity for this space already, right? And I think that's kind of the cusp that we're on right now. Yeah.
I would say one of the most unique things, especially for anyone that is dealing with tourism or industry growth, is that you're basically at an ecosystem, at the ground floor of building an ecosystem in real life. So the nice part is, though, is that you also have an industry that has been built pretty substantially over time and has been showing itself to be, long-standing with video game industry or those that are in creative industries, those types of things. To tie into this, I think is a very, very interesting opportunity from virtually anyone within the ecosystem's perspective. So from a workforce and talent development perspective, there's a lot on the post-secondary front that can be done. There's a lot of community building, so a lot of our community organizations may find this very interesting and something that can provide new growth opportunities for their own programming or any of the grants that they may get in the future. From a new investor perspective, you have an industry that you can start to interact with more meaningfully and potentially attract more into and see grow in a more substantial way. And then you have also those that are in the, let's say, the rest of the industry cluster, so to speak. So those that may not be tied directly into esports or into game development or event organizing or anything else, that are still the supporters around. So this really is quite an interesting opportunity from everyone's perspective, I would say, and not just focused on tourism itself. You're building an entire ecosystem, and you're seeing some areas that may be a little bit further ahead than others. I know that we can see that in Surrey from our own perspective with post-secondary growth in the area and the potential for new programs to be built up, or we have KPU with Kwantlen Polytechnic University within the area that has been active in this space. University of British Columbia obviously has. Simon Fraser University as well has been active in those spaces. We have them all within 5 minutes of our city hall. So those are all opportunities for us to not only tie in from, an e-tourism perspective, but also on workforce and talent, on new industry investment, on innovation for existing industries. It's just a whole opportunity set that has opened up for folks.
Yeah, it's really interesting because, I'll go back because it's always fresh in my mind because I'm talking to them all the time. But we want to attach ourselves to events and to organizations that speaks the language of the community that we have, and our city stakeholders and our councillors and our mayor and they want to have a feel good. And so we love Riot because, we've had all these planning meetings with them for several months, right? We're flagging the city. We're doing visitor booths here. We're doing all this stuff. They have a team of like 15 people who just work on activating community. It's amazing, right? And so when you work with an organization, you want to pick the organization that actually speaks. It turns us on, right? As a city, because they're speaking what we want them to speak, right? They want to, and we went through a list, right? Because we have Ubisoft, we have Overactive Media, we have Shopify, we have all this stuff in our city. And I went through the list, and the first thing they always came back to was, first and foremost, we want to activate our post-secondary, our colleges, our universities, right? And at first, I was like, okay, but what about this? No, we want to hone in on this. And it's like, okay. Then they said why, right? And it's one of those aha moments, right? Where they go, yeah, but Scott, we need to activate and engage the students who are going to be our future employees, right? These are the people who are going to work for Riot. So we need to show them the love now, right? Just like his Red Bull game. It's sponsored by Red Bull, but they get it, right? And there are other organizations and companies that are sponsoring the post-secondary colleges and universities because they get the big picture, right? And so you want to attach yourself to events like those, because then our mayor can stand on stage or in the media and say, and we just generated 10 scholarships, right? To go to Riot from TN, right? It's a good story to tell.
Yeah, I love that emphasis on storytelling. And I think that's something that our industry sometimes struggles with, is actually speaking the narrative of what's happening and why it's so important. One of the questions that I wanted to ask, if I can unlock my phone here. So obviously esports is on the radar of tourism and government bodies in your own regions, right? That's why you guys are here. How aware of esports, or sort of on the radar, is it for other regions that maybe you interact with on a daily, on a day-to-day basis or on a monthly, whether it's a neighboring city or a neighboring province? Aside from yourselves, do you see a lot of engagement or awareness of esports?
So when I was handed this file, the first thing that my CEO said to me is, there's an event run by North Star Media called the Esports Travel Summit. We should really look into this, right? And I said, I don't even know what the heck it is, but sure, whatever. So we did a active research on what it was. It's owned by North Star Media. They run a bunch of events, including what is called the Esports Travel Summit. And so the Esports Travel Summit has always been held in the US. And so we put in an active bid to host it for 2 years, 2023 and 2028, because we want them to see the picture, the difference in the city in a 5-year time span. We wanted to tell a story that way. And so that's a B2B conference, right? That is ESL, Riot, Blast, all flying into wherever it is. It's in Raleigh, it's in Birmingham, it's in Dallas, wherever. And destinations from all around North America have one-on-one appointments with them. And they are selling and pitching their city, their destination, their venue, right? And so I know I can't host everything. I'm sharing that knowledge and wealth with my other cities in my other areas. Ottawa, I'm sharing it with Kingston. I'm sharing it with other smaller communities that may be interested in joining, right? Because the more you get, the more people that are coming and the more business knowledge and exchange that's being done, the more successful that event's going to be, right? And it creates the longevity of that event. So yeah, we're starting to see, me personally, in Canada, right, among the Surreys and the Vancouvers, there's certain cities that we're seeing pop up a lot. Calgary, Edmonton, right? They're coming out with their strategies. They have strategies. So more and more cities and communities across the country are starting to do it. But like I said in my earlier talk, I mean, we're doing it, but I mean, Raleigh, if you want to see a postcard of how to do it right, Raleigh's the place to look, right? Because they've got it down, right? And they've got a model, right? Where the governor of the state has agreed that there should be e-sport funding in their budget, right? So we're just not there yet, but we're getting there.
Yeah, I think, Scott, you just nailed it on that front of the comment that I would make. Certainly we see it in the Vancouver metro region. I think there's a broad awareness of what esports can bring. And we've definitely taken our time and due diligence as the city to go to areas like Dallas-Fort Worth and really see what they've been doing there, other locations across North America to really understand what is the potential for esports and how can we play a bit of a role. But just like you had noted, is this really needs to transact more at a provincial level, I would say, or have some recognition of, knowing that there's been quite a bit of silence, so to speak, on any of the funding and or potential that we see just even in organizing support or, longstanding kind of recognition that this can be a part of the sports tourism industry and having the benefit here.
Yeah, and I think from my experience, I opted to be here today. Like I wasn't told to be here or there was no initiative to get me here. I of my own volition wanted to be here because I recognize like in our smaller community, we need more active proponents. It's not that we're dragging behind per se, there's just not as much volume, right? So I think part of what I can be doing is turning up that volume, amplifying these messages and really trying to make sure that they understand. Like I had some conversations recently and it's like, they're still considering esports to be like amateur sporting and different things like this. And there's, just these organizational governmental bodies are kind of still looking at it as they don't know what to do with it, especially when it comes to the rurals, right? So we're really having to actively get out there and advocate for this. Like I asked the tourism, I'm like, hey, I'm going to be tagging you while I'm over there, right? And like these kind of things, because if I can show that bit of, drive, I'm hoping it'll create that in them. And it's really interesting. When I think about how it all has to kind of happen, there is, great opportunities for this. We don't have an international airport, but we have like UNESCO heritage sites all within like 45 minutes of where I'm living. And, there is amazing like food and tasting tours, other tourism type focuses. And I'm trying to really weave that through. So even as an example, this year we're partnered with Geek Fest. So we have a pop culture, exhibition. There's cosplay going on. There's great artisanal vendors, and it's a lot more kind of in that area of things. It's open, it's free to attend, so you don't even need a conference pass to do that. You just come in and you can go to Geek Fest for the day, and then you'll see the conference happening. It's an optic play where I'm at right now, because I know in 5 years, like I want to start entertaining bids. I want to be able to bring these sizable opportunities to my community in this amazing new facility that we have that's still being underutilized because people are trying to figure out how to use it. And I'm going to be one of the leaders, I think, that wants to emerge and do this. And so it's also a culture thing, right? So we're partnered with Taco Fest this year. They're down the hall in a trade hall. They're offering on the Saturday to have like dinner and lunch. So we created a Lethbridge Innovation and Taste Pass. And so we're making sure that people know about Taco Fest, and that's their meal of choice for the Saturday. It's happening on the Saturday. We're going to prompt them even on the Friday, because I want people to experience that culture, because we're building and growing culture. And esports in our community, we actually already have an active culture of esports in our community. It's just under the radar. And so how does one bring that up? Well, you got to turn up the volume, and that's what I'm here trying to do. So I think, it's quite a privilege to be, sitting alongside City of Surrey and Destination Toronto. I mean, I just did this because I thought it was a great idea. So, I mean, if you have a great idea out there, that's what I'm a big proponent of. Like, we want to nurture those things, and it just takes a little bit of that inviting people into the mix.
I'm just going to say one last thing very quick. So, as much as we are a big city, right? I'm happy when other cities are hosting world-class esport events in our country. Canada first, I've been thinking that for decades, right? Because by Vancouver hosting MSI this year, right? Waterloo hosting Champs, all of these companies are then coming into our country, generating economy in our country, telling a super awesome story of how awesome it was to be in our country, and it makes my selling down the road way easier. So it doesn't all have to be in Toronto. I don't want it all to be in Toronto. I want Surrey to be booming. I want Richmond to be booming. I want Hamilton to be booming, because then it's just the country's booming, right? And it makes our job easier the next time they're looking.
I think there's also a couple of things that we can all be doing, regardless of some of the larger events that we all want to see within our communities, or to be able to see the industry grow really well with. But we also need to know that there are some steps along the way that need to be in place. So encouraging our existing business community, or our hotels, or any venues that we may have on a smaller or more community focused basis, to actually have some smaller esports activations. Getting in front of people on a consistent basis to make them aware of that the industry is actually growing. Hosting different workshops to make sure that they're aware of how do you actually create an interesting experience for, as you're welcoming visitors at a certain point, what are the things that they need to see? Because that translates to real dollars for their business. It helps to build the industry, and it also creates more legitimacy in the average person's eyes if they were absolutely unaware.
Yeah. Sorry, did you want to speak more? No, that's cool. Yeah, really good points there, guys. So one thing that I want to sort of maybe clarify and expand on a little bit about what you said. So, Scott, you talked about the idea of speaking the right language, right? When it comes to organizing esports event, obviously there's, as a tourism body, you sort of play a certain role in the ecosystem. There's also, potentially the client, something like Riot, who's wanting to host the event, or maybe it's something a little bit that's smaller, like more community focused. We have, private sponsors and things like that. What's the role of a regional tourism body in the whole event ecosystem, just at a high level? Help us all sort of understand what your responsibility is and how you sort of, contribute to something like an event.
I'm going to pass it this way just because you guys have a little more.
All right, so I'll start with a very funny story, because when I first got in this world, we registered to go to the Esport Travel Summit down in the US. First time ever. I've never been to an esport conference. Never. Me, in my world, I'm a suit and tie guy, right? And when I travel to these, I don't go by myself, especially in this market, right? I bring my geeks, right? And I bring the city, and I bring the Jeffs, and got off the plane, got to the hotel, and the first thing he saw me, like I had my suit, he says, "Get that off. Don't you dare spend the next 4 days talking to gamers and esport companies in a suit," right? And I went, Okay. Put on a hoodie, put on Nikes, put on khakis, you're good. They'll get you, right? And so we had a booth there. And then you have all the other destinations that are there from the US, Bloomington and all these cities, right? Daytona. They're in suits. Where do you think they all landed and hung out? They hung out with us because we were speaking their language, right? And so that's the first key, right? You got to learn how to speak their language. I may not speak it, but I'm surrounded with the people who do speak it, right? I don't pretend to know it. I know that I'm good at this, but I know they're great at this. And so as long as you surround yourself with that, your pitch is huge, right? And then you speak the language, right? I'll never wear a suit to a gaming thing again. Ever. I won't even bring it in the luggage. I think this is the most I have, right? But that's as formal as I get, right? I love it.
So I feel very attacked. Very attacked. I will say that Kevin had noted over to me that business cash. He had said, wear it. So good on you, pal. I got you. What I will say for what the role is from a overall a DMO, or I'll bring it up even further on. Let's just talk about the economic development ecosystem for a second. Awareness build is going to be a really big one. Connection over to the industry and those that are organizing, I think is going to be really important in showcasing a lot of support, showcasing a lot of the economic infrastructure that's in place. Also understanding what are your targets that you're looking for in terms of any, what are the measures of success that you're looking at? You know, are you trying to get 20% of the folks that are coming into this event or in esports, are they, going to be heads and beds, or are you looking at visiting friends and family or any relatives kind of traffic? Are you looking at, internationals versus domestic? Any of your targeting that you need to be aware of. On top of it, though, you're going to be looking at what's induced spending for folks, quite frankly, is like, what is the potential there? How do you activate and give a great experience for people that are going to be attending a different event or as a part of their bid package or your bid package or otherwise? What are the things that you can actually make a really interesting experience so you set people's perceptions appropriately about what you're trying to build? And let's not forget either is that for any of us that are up here, you are going to partner in with those brands or events or otherwise that are important to your own brand. Mm-hmm. To what you're trying to convey out to the public is what is really important to you. And you should be really authentic about that as well. If you want to be young and dynamic and really grow kind of a new kind of 2.0 workforce, go after esports. That's certainly what we're seeing from our side, right? Really showcase that you're interested in what this industry can provide and bring out.
Yeah, and I think the examples are clear. Like when we reflect even on the events here today, like, you've got players from all these international destinations coming into Vancouver. And, this is a large format event, long running. And so I'm looking at this going like, okay, how do I simulate this environment so that we eventually get to this scope? And when I reflected on our outcomes from last year, we saw just under a quarter of our attendees were from, and this is, a tourism economic development thing in Alberta, at least. If they're from 40 kilometers or more outside of your municipality, then they're considered, a leisure travel or a visitor in that sense. So, when I did all those calculations and I looked at, okay, so we're having an impact. We've got, a reasonably attractive thing that we're doing where we're seeing almost a quarter of folks coming in from not our area. And I'd like to, in the future, get that up to, that 50-50 level or something like that. We're trying to target things like that because I think that'll provide that organic growth year over year. We'd like to do some more unique add-ons so that we're able to, attract a different type of delegate in some ways too, because we want to keep it maneuverable and interesting. And, every year is going to be a little different in our kind of build. Because I think it's, we're basing it on the feedback, what people really want to see in our community, and then seeing if others from around the world might actually take us up on it. And so, it's a bit of an experimental thing, but I'm an entrepreneur and, human-centered design kind of guy. That's what I do in my career. So, I'm really listening and I'm trying to understand how do I play a role and play a part. And my hope is that, you know, our tourism friends and colleagues are going to really see that, hey, this is something to be further explored. And when I see how it's coming together for the larger centers, it gives me hope, because I'm like, okay, so usually we're a couple years behind maybe, right? And so this might be a signal that that we're onto something. Yeah.
I don't know if that turned on or not. You guys hear me? No?
Press and hold.
We can hear you anyway.
Okay. I'll just talk with my diaphragm. It's fine. Yeah. So Eyren, I just want to appreciate the sort of, as a fellow entrepreneur, the mention of how scrappy Canadians tend to be rather, when it comes to stuff like this. So I think we've got time for maybe one more question here. It's going to be a bit of a two-parter. So, and then we'll go to Q&A. But so the last question I would have is, as DMOs or tourism bodies or as event organizers, what advice do you have for the rest of the esports community moving forward in terms of engaging with folks like yourselves to sort of make these events go forward successfully? And then part B is also, what do you see as sort of the future of esports events moving forward here in Canada?
So from my infancy, I'll say, you know, I don't have a ton of time to game these days. I'm raising 3 kids and running 5 businesses. So when we're doing those things, you know, I get a little leisure play some Mario Party with the kids, things like that, right? But I'm still connected. And, you know, I hope that, you know, people who are fully entrenched, they can appreciate that there are people like myself who value what's going on and who understand, like, hey, I want to work in here, and I may not know all the stuff about the new formats and modes. Like I was talking to people today, I'm back in game battles and SOCOM too. Like that's my jam, up, you know, till 3 a.m. on a school night in Hamilton, Ontario, right? So that was my play. Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. But AOL Instant Messenger, I mean, if some of you is, you know, that was back in the day. And so there's a bit of a learning curve for me too. Like I'm a tech guy, I understand, but even just seeing the levels of like what needs to go into a production at a level where the gamers or competitive players are going to observe that quality, like that's a bit of a hill for me to climb, because I'm not using OBS. I'm not, you know, I can run a pretty good production, but there's some aspects to it that I'm still unclear on, and I just want to be supportive, but I also need to learn and be kind of brought along by folks who are really developing those skill sets, right? And I mean, and I think there's something really magical about that when I look at how that can come together, because like I'm saying, like I want to have a team of people who are ready and willing to produce this kind of an event at least a couple times a year. We're at once a year right now. And, you know, eventually maybe we can do a bit more. And we want to tap into, you know, we're partnered with GameCon, for instance, because they're up in Edmonton. They were saying to me, they're like, so are we in competition with you guys? And they were at our event last year promoting what's going on. And I'm like, I don't really think so. Like we're a bit more of that in your backyard style, but we want to know how you guys are perceiving us, and we want to know how we can get involved with what you're doing. Because if I can create pipeline to other amazing events, then the experience continues on, right? If someone runs into what's happening elsewhere in the province or in the country because of what I've put together, that's those dividends, right? Like that's really that network effect. So for me, that would be kind of what I would ask for, you know, in the community of people working on these kind of things. You know, just remember, like, you know, we want to understand and really be playing a part in that piece of things, but there's also some things that people like myself, we don't know exactly how it should run. Like, you know, even just keeping up with the bracket play downstairs, I'm like, I don't know what the hell's going on. But it's okay. I love playing Smash, but that was N64, guys. Like, you know, that's a whole different era, right? So love to be here, and thanks for inviting me up.
Thank you. I would suggest there's probably a couple of things. One of them that I think is really critically important, I think, for all of us to remember as this industry grows across Canada, is let's not be myopic and start to play the game of being too concerned about competition between our communities. Mm-hmm. This industry is set to grow in a very substantial way. So if you, depending on which projections or groups that you're looking at, you're close to 20% compound annual growth rate for any expenses that are going into esports. knowing that there are some challenges, of course, with the industry here right now. So we'll see if there are blips over time, and that's a forecast, which is crystal balling. But nonetheless, we are seeing all of the trends here is that there is significant growth underway. This is a collaboration space right now. It's going to be very critical for us if we want to see that professionalization of this industry and with these esports, that we do need to collaborate and have more of that space before we compete. So it needs to be a co-opetition more than anything else. On top of it, I would note from potentially a city, a DMO, or an economic development perspective, be clear on what your narrative is, on what you're aiming to do, what you're wanting to build out, what you're needing from a city, a DMO, or otherwise. Be clear on what your numbers are. That narrative and those numbers are going to be critical for us to ensure that our councils, those decision makers, ourselves, any grants are going to be granted over to yourselves. There is not always a big pot of money that is there, and folks need to be aware of that as well. You may end up seeing in-kind contributions where you get some support for, could be city amenities in some of the cases where you can host your locations. In some cases, there may not be anything that can be done. So keeping flexible on those items is important, but those connections and that community build is critically important. We're at that stage here now where even just by virtue of saying, here is what I'm aiming to do, X, Y, Z out in front of us, can you help me? We'll take you miles. I haven't met a person yet in my career, some a-holes here and there, fair enough, but I haven't met someone yet, if I end up saying, I want to accomplish X, Y, and Z for my, what I want to do in my own career or for the community I'm representing or otherwise, that has turned me down or has let me down. Has not happened yet.
We're trying to speak your language. And so what we ask of you is to try and speak our language, especially when you're asking something of us, right? So we're trying our hardest, right? And so we need you to break it down for us and almost sell it to us as to why we should invest in you, right? In order for me to get funding, I have to then sell it to my board. It's not just ask Scott opens wallet, here's money. That's not the way it works. I have to put a business case together. You picture it. It's like me walking into a courtroom with a panel of judges, and I now have to have them vote with my way. So I need you to speak my language so I can speak it to them so that they can give me what you want, right? It's the only way, right? And so, and I've referred to this again, and I think, I have Kevin's data from this week, right? I love it because that speaks our language. It's broken down by the continent. He's showing how many ticket sales are coming per province. He's showing how many ticket sales are coming from the US and which states. How many are from the US? That speaks my language. So if Kevin wants to go and get money, that's the data they're going to ask for, right? And so the world of esports is growing. People are finally getting on the train, right? The train has left the station and we're slowly picking up speed, right? That's where we are right now. But that's exciting, right? That's the most exciting part of this, is the start of this, right? And building that momentum, right? It's the beginning of something amazing, especially when all of these events are starting to take notice in our country, right? Especially in this geopolitical climate. I was in London, England last week in front of ESL, in front of Blast, in front of these companies. And they're looking at us in a little bit closer light because of things that are going down in South, right? So we're becoming a little bit more attractive. They want to be in North America, but instead of looking at the usuals, the Dallases, maybe we'll sway up north a bit. Right? So the train's left the station. People are jumping on. Not everyone's on. We'll get them eventually.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. I think we'll go to Q&A here quickly. We've got like maybe 5 minutes for one or two questions. If anyone Yeah.
For Scott, when you're talking to a publisher like Riot, how do you sell them on coming to Toronto versus somewhere like a Saudi Arabia where they have larger funding and it seems like the odds are kind of stacked against you?
Yep. So we asked them outright, what are we up against? Who are we up against? What does it take to get your business? That's the first question I ask. If I'm going to work for you and get you your $2 million, you need to be upfront with me and say, who am I competing with and what am I up against? Right? Otherwise, I can't play in the game. There's no point in me trying all my efforts if they're not telling me even a range, right? I don't need to know the exact number. But there's no point in me in putting on all this time and effort, going to my people and asking for a range that's half the amount of Saudi Arabia. I'm wasting my time. I'm wasting my time. So it's an open dialogue. I've been working directly with Riot since 2020, and I've had those conversations with them on a multiple number of events, as well as Blast, as well as ESL. So, and that's where the data is coming from, right? To host those top 10, I need $16 million. I know that number because I know how much, because I've been part of the RFP process for all of them, right? So I know how much they're asking. I know how much DreamHack wants, and I know how much Dallas has given them, right? You have to be an expert in your destination, but you also have to know your competition just as much as you know your city.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Maybe a little bit more focused on local when you're not getting these big contracts. Is keeping local engagement high something like in the industry, something that you're also looking at when navigating your city's future in esports? So doing things like finding ways that events like this can happen or start to grow on a smaller scale to eventually become large, big ticket attractors. Is that something that you are looking at either in tourism or in the city of Surrey or even more locally?
So absolutely, yes, that is something that we are wanting to see. And I think that's going to be the theme for anyone that has been to these sessions here over the last while, is that we are in that building phase here overall and ensuring that we can galvanize into the future. So our Healthy Communities group, our recreation group, is very focused on sports overall, which includes esports. We want to see that activate from an economic investment services standpoint or from a business and government relations standpoint. We want to see that continue to grow. It is an area that is important on so many verticals for us. Not only is it a defined attribute towards our brand, our community definition, you're also going to be seeing some of the potential on your actual economy build that you see over time. You have your talent and workforce development and attraction. And let's be honest, from a Surrey standpoint, we're transforming overnight. We have seen massive growth come into the city that we have not really had that chance to speak about overall throughout the rest of Canada yet. But I would venture a guess it would shock you to know some of the growth and the gems that we have here. It's going to be very similar for anything within esports, that this will be an overnight success, 5 years in the making, 2 years in the making, whatever it is. But we just need to keep at it consistently, which means having those smaller events, those community building events, are even more important.
Yeah, and I think the challenge I'm running into at the local, smaller community level is compute, really, like the systems and infrastructure. Like I don't have anywhere to go necessarily to install massive amounts of computer systems and console systems. So even last year we were very fortunate to be partnered with the school division, and they happened to just have 90 box computer, $200,000 in computer equipment that wasn't networked in yet. So we've got a 5-year plan. We're really hoping to attract that back in year 5, because we want to be able to provide that level of play and engagement. But, what we're dealing with this year is we might only have, 15 setups, and, we're trying to build the peripherals so there's still lots of fun and engagement. We're going to run a healthy set of brackets. We've got some great help, in providing for that. But I think, shout out to Kevin and the audience there. But absolutely, like I think the key is that we don't want to lose sight of it. And, eventually we want to get to the point where DMOs and destination organizations are willing to look at us and go like, hey, we'll give you a shot, and maybe there is some funding in tow. Like, I mean, I didn't even realize I should have known this, but I didn't realize like you guys are actually like putting forth and really, because it's the ROI is insane, right? So if I can figure out the ROI and start to buffer this up a bit, we're going to be able to, you know, produce in other regional areas. And there's booming kind of mid-size communities all over the country. And I think that's the market that I'm eyeing, because there's already proficient and amazing, wonderful things happening in the larger centers. So I see my space as how do we continue to build that contingent that's going to enjoy something in their backyard and then travel into the larger ones that, you know, have a little bit more oomph to them. But there's a space for all of us. Like you were saying, I like the co-opetition outlook. I like that you guys both brought that up in today's talk. And so, yeah, that's how I'm trying to really deal with that local piece, because our FGC groups and our student clubs and things like this, they're strong. I think it's FGC? FGC. Yeah, they're, you know, and I'm just getting to start, we used to host them at our business incubator like 5 years ago. I helped them run an esports tournament with like 30 setups. They got more setups than I didn't even know how to find. So relying on those partnerships and that cooperation, right? That's how we're going to make this happen. And you usually, if you're 50,000 people or so, you might have some of that going on. The smaller you get, the little bit harder it can be. But we don't want to lose that momentum from that really big year we had, where we actually had like a well-funded large organization providing some infrastructure. You know, that's our hope to bring it right back to that and have like an anniversary type of a build.
I think I said it before, is and it works for all verticals, not just esport, not just sport, not just corporate association. Never forget your own backyard. Never forget your own backyard. That is the business model I've lived with for the past 19 years when I've represented this city. Your backyard is your base. It's your base. It's going to see through thick and thin, shitty times, tough times. The base is always going to be there, right? And it's in our own backyard. And if you forget about your backyard and you try and go get that backyard business after you forgot about them for 5 years, they're going to go screw you. Right? And so that's the way we live. That's the way us as a city works. We want to support the GOMLs. We want to support the XP Game Developer Summit. We want to support the Canada Gaming Week. We want to support all of it. And we want not just us, but we want the city to be engaged. And so this year in June, we're expecting 75,000 people to be coming into our city, not just for VCT, or for XP Gaming Developers Summit, Canada Gaming Week. All of these things are taking place. It's going to end at the beginning of July with GOML. So that whole story is huge, right? And some of those are just backyard business.
Yeah, I think one thing, not that I'm necessarily have too much to say on it, but Chris put it best, I think, yesterday when he said, water your own grass, right? I think is what the quote was. I mean, that sums it up pretty well. So I know that we're at time here, and this is the last panel for the day. Kevin, Rose, I don't know if you guys wanted to come up and do any sort of final.
Well, but you can close the panel first.
Okay. Panel closed. Thanks, everybody. Bye. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, guys. Yeah, pleasure.